Okay, so one thing that we can do to improve our game is to create our own custom fonts. So right now we play the game and the font of the score is the default font. And when we die, we have the fonts of our score and our best score that are the default ones. But it would be nice if we could create our own font and apply it to our numbers. So we can actually do it. Let's go to our assets folder and let's create another folder. And this folder, we're gonna call it materials. Materials like this. If you think that your folders are too small or you cannot see them, you can go over here at the bottom right of the project view, and there's like a bar and you can make your folders bigger or smaller like this. Alright, so we're also gonna create another folder. So right click and create a new folder, and inside this folder we're gonna call it fonts. Alright, so we need to create a material, but before doing anything we're gonna go to our sprites folder. And inside our sprites folder, you can see that we have the sprite sheet, we have the flappy font, the large flappy font, and the middle flappy font. So we have a larger flappy font and a middle flappy font. So we're gonna select the large flappy font, and then we're gonna go to the inspector. And here in the inspector, we're gonna just make some changes. So set the filter mode to point no filter, and set the compression quality to none. Hit apply, and let's do the same thing for the middle flappy font. Let's set the filter mode to point no filter and the compression quality to none, and hit apply. Okay, so now we have our sprites of our fonts ready to use them. Okay, so let's go, first of all, let's go to our materials folder, and inside our materials folder we're gonna right click and then we're gonna select create, and then we're gonna try and see if we can find material. So select material, and we're gonna call this flappy large. And this is gonna be the material for a flappy large font. So select the material and go over here in inspector, and you can see that there are many fields here in main maps. Select albedo, and once you select albedo, you will see all of this. Select the larger flappy font. Okay, once you select it, we have our material ready to use it, but now we need to create a font. So in the fonts folder, go to the fonts folder and right click and create, and we're gonna go to custom font over here. So this flappy font, I'm gonna call it flappy large. Okay, so this is the name of the font, and once you select the font, you can see in the inspector all the properties of the font. So you can see that here is a field for the default material, so we're gonna select the flappy large material that we created. And here, if you click on this arrow over here, it says size, and in size we need to put in the amount of characters that we want to have for our font. In our case, we are just gonna make the numbers, so the numbers go from 0 to 9. That's 10 characters. Hit enter, and now we have all the elements, so you can open them to see them. You can open all of the elements. Okay, so we have the element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3 until element 9. Alright, so okay, so now the question is, what do we put in here, right? What do we actually need to put in here? So I will tell you everything step by step. So the first thing we have to take notice of is the index. Each element has an index, and element 0 is number 0. So element 0 would be number 49. I'm not making this number up. This number corresponds to the ASCII code, okay? So if you want to know these numbers, you can look them up in the internet, but for element 0 is number 49, for element 1 is 50, for element 2 is 51, for element 3 is 52, and so on. So complete all of the numbers. If you scroll with the mouse wheel, you might skip some, you might go very, very fast. So one thing that you can do is just use this bar, because it goes a little bit smoother, the bar on the right of the inspector, and you can go down with that bar because it works a little bit better. So 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, and 58. All right, so this would be the indexes for all of the elements. Now you have to focus on the UV. So the UV of the element 0, what do we put in here? So we need to take a look at the sprite that we used to make the texture. So we're gonna go and see, this is the sprite that we used to create our Flappy large font. Okay, so our sprite has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements on the x-axis and 2 elements on the y-axis. So if it has one, the indexes go from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, but the total of elements is 5. So 5 elements over here and 2 elements over here, and the indexes along the y-axis go like this. They go instead of going 0, 1, they go 1. Okay, so not 1. Okay, let me correct that. Okay, they go like this. They go with a 0 in here and then a 1, like this. So they go the inverse way. I don't know why they do it like that way, but they go like this. So now that we know that there's 2 elements on the y-axis and 5 elements on the x-axis, now we just have to say 1 divided by 5 equals 0.2. So here in the Unity editor, where it says UV, we have to select 0.2. But not in here where it says X, but in the width. So 0.2 here, and in the height we put 0.5 because there are 2 elements on the y-axis, so it would be the inverse of 2, that is 1 divided by 2. Okay, see, it's a little bit weird, but it's just the way it is. And this is true for every single element, so repeat the operation, so 0.2, 0.5, and for every single element is the same, so just repeat it, 0.2, 0.5. Just make sure that you actually put this value in the correct fields. 0.2 and 0.5, 0.2 and 0.5. Okay, so we're almost done. And 0.5. Alright, so we got every single element with the right numbers. So we are now in the UV, we're still in the UV section. So we completed the values for the width and the height, for W and height. So now we need to complete the values for X and width, and Y, sorry, for X and Y. And to do that, let's focus again on the indexes. So now we have to focus on the indexes. So they go from 0 to 4 in here, and in the Y-axis they go from 0 to 1. So they go, so if there were like 3 rows, then it would be 0, 1, and 2 in here. Okay, so now that we know how the indexes go, we need to focus on the first element, and then we have to see where the first element is on the x-axis and on the y-axis. So element 0 is on the index 0 on the x-axis and 1 on the y-axis. So if we go back to Unity, we say, okay, so in the x-axis, element 0, this is element 0. Element 0 is 0 on the x-axis, so we say 0 times 0.2, which is 0. So we leave it as it is. On the y-axis, we say, okay, so on the y-axis is 1. It's on index 1. So 1 times 0.5, it's 0.5. And if we take a look, this will be true. All of these elements, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, these 5 elements are on index 1 for the y-axis. They only change on the x-axis, so the y will remain the same until element 4. So if we're here in Unity, in the Unity editor, we know that this is going to be 0.5, and in here it's going to be, instead of 0, element 1 is at index 1, so on the x-axis, so it's going to be 1 times 0.2, which is 0.2. Then element 2 is going to be at index 3, so it's going to be 0.6, 0.4, sorry, because it's going to be at element 2. So element 2 is going to be at index 2 on the x-axis, so 2 times 0.2 is 0.4, and 0.5 on the y-axis. Then element 3 is going to be at index 3, so 0.6 in this case, because it would be 3 times 0.2, 0.6, and on the y-axis is 0.5. And element 4 is going to be 0.8 on the x-axis. I mean, it's going to be at index 4 on the x-axis, so the value for this x is going to be 0.8, and the value for this y is going to be 0.5. But now element 5, if we take a look at element 5, it's at index 0 on the x-axis and it's at index 0 on the y-axis, and this is going to be true for every single element in this row, that they're all going to be on index 0 on the y-axis. So if they're on index 0 on the y-axis, it's going to be 0 times 0.5, which is 0. So this is going to stay 0, and the only thing that's going to change is the x in this case from here onwards. So in this case, it's going to be 0 times 0, 0.2 is going to be 0. Then it's going to be the same thing. So 0.2 because the index is 1, 0.4 because the index is 2 in here, 0.6 because the index is 3 in here, and 0.8 because the index is 4 in here. All right, so we have already 4 fields completed. So now the last thing that we need to complete, or one of the last things that we need to complete, is we need to go to where it says vert, and here we have to type in the width and the height of the elements of each element in pixels. So we should know what the height and the width is of these elements, and we should specify it in the Unity editor. Okay, so for this I have something in my Flappy assets folder. I have some data that I collected. So I think it's here. Yeah, so here basically I have the width and the height for the large font and for the middle font. So for the large font is width, the width is 12 and the height is 18. Okay, so the width is 12 and the height is 18. But the way you put in the height is with a minus. And this, I don't know why they do it this way, but it's a minus. So it's this, so the height and the width is going to be the same for every single element. So 12 and minus 18, 12 and minus 18, and repeat for every single element. All right, so we already have every single element with the data that we need, but we need one more field to complete, and it's the advanced field. So the advanced field is basically how many pixels each element is gonna leave to its right, so that the next element will be printed at a certain distance. So here we have element 0, so the advanced would be the amount of pixels that we want the 0 to have until when we print or when we type another number next to the 0. So that's the advanced, and the value that we need to type in for the advanced for the Flappy large font is 10. So we need to print a value of 10 for each number. But the thing is that the number 1 is a little bit different. Here I say that number 1 should have an advance of 6 and an offset of -2. Why is this? Well, this is because 1 is a different number. You can see that 1 has a different width, and there's more space between this character and the 0, and this character and the next number. So that's why we have to play with the values of number 1 until we get the right values. All right, so we know that it's 10 for all the numbers except for element 1. Element 1 is special. It has an advance of 6 and an offset of -2 on the x-axis, so in here in this field. And then for the rest of the numbers is the same. It's 10. The advance is 10. Okay, so let's just put in the values. So 10, 10, and 10. Let's make sure that every single element has the right values. All right, so now what we can do is that we can actually select our score. We can uncheck it. And now what we can do is that we can select the font of the score. So let's change it to Flappy Large. And now we should be able to see something. But what happens is that everything is very small. So okay, so apparently what's happening is that okay. So 1 is 0. Okay, something weird is happening here. All right, let me check. Okay, so basically what I got wrong is that when we created our font, element 0 is actually number 48. So if element 0 is 48, then we should change the indexes to one less. So this is 51, then 53 is 52, 54 is 53, 55 is 54, 56 is 55, 57 is 56, and 58 is 57. All right, so now everything should work fine. Let's go and select our score. And now if we place in a 0, it's a 0. All right, so it's a very small 0 and it has a shadow. We don't need the shadow anymore, so let's remove that component. Let's make the 0 a little bit bigger, so let's scale it to 8 and 8 like this. We can put it a little bit over here, and you can see that the size of the score is huge. So let's change that to maybe 60 by 20, something like that. All right, so we got that up and running. So now we can hide the score, and now we have to make a new font for the panel score and the panel high score. So we can hide the get ready image, and we can actually show the game over. And we need a new font for this. So try and see if you can make the other font with the flappy middle font for the score and the high score. Try to do it yourself. It's a little bit difficult, but try to do it and pause the video. All right, so now what we have to do is that we need to do the font for the flappy middle. Okay, so let's go to materials. Let's create a new material. So create material, and this one I'm gonna call it flappy mid, like this. I'm gonna go and click Albedo and select the flappy middle. Okay, so now that I have it, now we're gonna go to fonts. I'm gonna create a new custom font. So create custom font like this, and I'm gonna call this font flappy mid, like this. The size of this font is gonna be 10. The default material for this font is gonna be flappy mid, and the indexes start at 48. So the index number 0 starts at 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, and so on. 55, 56, 57. Okay, so from 48 up to 57. All right, so now what we have to do, we have to check the same thing. So here, if we check this flappy middle font, well, you can see that it's the same thing as with the flappy large font. Here we have the indexes. These are the indexes. So 1, 0, like this. And then, well, this has a size of 5 elements. There are 5 elements on the x-axis and 2 elements on the y-axis. So it's the same thing basically. Here it's 0.2 and 0.5. We can actually go ahead and complete this. Here it would be 0 and 0.5. So here it's 0.2, 0.2, 0.5, and here we have 0.5. The next one is 0.2, 0.5, 0.4, and in here we have to put in a 0.5. The next element, it's 0.2, 0.5, 0.4, 0.6, sorry, and in here we have to put in a 0.5, like this. It's very important that you do it exactly, because if you make a mistake here, then you're gonna notice later. So here the next element is 0.2, 0.5, 0.8, and 0.5. Then the next 5 elements are 0 here on the y, so it's just 0.2, 0.5, and in here it's a 0 it's a 0 and a 0 for the first element. For the second element, 0.2, 0.5, 0.2, and 0. In here it's 0.4, 0.2, and 0.5. Next element is 0.6, 0.2, and 0.5. And the next element is 0.8, 0.2, and 0.5. Alright, well, now that we have that, we need to focus on the size. So the size for the middle font, the size is, the width is 7 and the height is 10. So the width is 7 and the height is minus 10. The width is 7 and the height is minus 10. The width is 7 and the height is minus 10. And we can actually go ahead and see what the advance is. So the advance is 8, but not for the number 1, which the advance is 6 and the offset is minus 1. So for the rest of the numbers, the advance is 8. So let's put it in. The advance is 8, the width is 7 and the height is minus 10. 8, 7, and minus 10. It's a little bit tough to do it, but it's a little bit demanding, but when you do it, it's very relieving because you have your own custom font in the game, which is amazing. And minus 10. And then it's 8, 7, and minus 10. So for number 1 is not 8, it's 6, and the offset is minus 1 in here, so minus 1, the offset of for the x. Alright, so now that we have this ready, we can select our panel score, and then we can change the font to Flappy Mid like this. And you can see that it's very, very little. We can change the color to white so we can see it better, and we can change the scale, because if we change the size, it's not going to work, so you have to change the scale. So 8 and 8 like this. You can see that the box of the size is very large, so let's change the width to maybe 40, something like this, and let's change the height to 10 maybe, and let's do the same thing with the panel high score. So let's change the font to Flappy Mid, let's change the scale to 8 and 8, let's change the width to 40 and the height to 10. Let's put it up a little bit, and then let's change the color to white so we can see it pretty good. Okay, so now everything looks pretty fine. Now we can just set the game as it was before, so hide the game over, unhide the get ready image, so make it visible, and now we can play the game, and our own font is in there, and you can see that we have our own score and our best score with the fonts that we want. Alright, so this was how to actually create, or more than create, how to import our custom font to Unity. So this is gonna be it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.